This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about something that you may find boring, but it is the backbone of business. And as Rockefeller said, you can't really be a businessman unless you're an accountant. And that's kind of how he got his start. And I think the same goes for your pool service. If you don't take proper accounting into your business, you're not going to be very successful in the long run. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. Of course, the richest man in the world was an accountant at heart. He actually started out as a bookkeeper, and accounting was one of his biggest things. If you didn't keep a ledger, and actually he kept a ledger as a teenager all through his life, marking down everything he spent. And this is something that is important in pool service as well. If you don't keep a ledger or proper accounting of your business, you really don't know how much money you're making. You also don't know what's losing you money, what needs to be shored up, and if something you're doing is costing you money that over the course of 15 years is something that adds up to a ton of money, which tends to happen in business where they make a mistake and they don't check their accounting properly. I know a business, it was a restaurant, and they didn't really take proper accounting, and they were being billed by their phone company. This is a while ago when you had landlines, and you still do have landlines in businesses, of course. But there was an add-on to the bill that they had no idea about, and it was for like an office kind of thing where there was if you had a telecommunications array, the phone company added on this charge, and it was like a pretty good sized charge, like $40 a month. And they didn't notice it probably for about 5 or 6 years, and they finally noticed this extra charge that on their phone bill of a service that we're not using. And if you just do the math, if you do 40 times 12, that's $480 a year times 5 years. That's $2,400 they lost by not looking at their bill carefully and noticing that the phone company was charging him for something that they weren't even using. And the same goes for your pool service business. There's always ways to cut some of your fixed expenses like insurance down by shopping around. I know commercial insurance for the vehicle is pretty expensive, but you can shop around the different companies. If you have a broker, they can find maybe the lowest rate. There's also things you can tweak with some of the coverage you have, and that could save you some money. And every little bit you save on, say, your commercial truck insurance or on something else like general liability insurance, if you switch over the UPA insurance, it's $64 a month for the general liability insurance. You'll hear a little commercial for that a little bit later here, but that will save you money if you're paying anywhere from $90 to $100 or $110. That's like a $40 savings every month. And with that example that I showed about the phone, $40 times 12, in 1 year you're going to save $480. So that's quite a savings if you just switch something like general liability to UPA from another company. That will save you some money there, or shop around for cheaper insurance. But you won't know any of this if you don't log it down and you don't have a good profit and loss system for your business. Now, unfortunately, QuickBooks doesn't really do like a spreadsheet with all your customers in a row with the rate you're charging and all the expenses that you're spending. Now, a pool routing app like Skimmer is going to go a long way in helping you account for how much you're spending at each account, but logging it into a spreadsheet is something that I recommend. If you go to Etsy.com, it's like a craft website where they make a lot of different crafty things. But on Etsy.com, there's actually spreadsheets for businesses that people created, but lock cells. And this is important because they create these spreadsheets that are designed for profit and loss, and then they lock the cells so you can't make any mistakes. If you ever tried creating a spreadsheet on Excel, you know how messy it gets. You get this weird math equation when you make a mistake in one of the cells. So I like Etsy because you can get these spreadsheets for like $10, and then the cells are locked in place. So you can just put in all your customers in the spreadsheet. It takes a while, yes. It may take you a whole afternoon. But if you were to put every customer in a spreadsheet, how much you're charging them, how much the chemicals are each time you're adding something, just little things, like you can even break down the minutia, like how much gas you're spending to get to that customer. If you wanted to really get deep into accounting and really find out if each account is making enough money for you to keep that account. For example, if you had an account where you're actually adding a lot more maintenance chemicals to, and then also that same account takes you an extra 5 minutes in driving, and all those costs add up, that account may not be profitable, and that may be an account you need to get off your route. But you won't know that unless you're making proper accounting, especially if you have employees and they're putting chemicals in and you're not making proper accounting for their usage in certain pools. Because there are some pools, and you know this being out there in the field, that are just chemical hogs. They could be heavy use pools. They could be pools with an underlying problem, but you're adding a lot of chlorine to those pools, and sometimes you're adding a lot of muriatic acid to those pools. And unless you're itemizing that, of course, which is a pain in itself, but if you're not itemizing your maintenance chemical dosage, then you're going to be spending a lot more money with that. Also, you can fine-tune your business knowing your profit and knowing proper accounting. For example, a lot of companies would just supply the trichlor tablets to their pools, which in a way was okay when they were inexpensive. And a lot of people don't think the customers would like a 50-pound bucket of tablets in their backyard. But you can find a location, usually around the equipment area, where it's not a big deal. And to have the customers absorb the tablet cost could save you a lot of money in your service if you do the math on that. And most of the companies in my area do not include the trichlor tablets because they get expensive. And if you have employees, they're overusing them in most cases. So it's much better for the customer to pay for that 50-pound bucket of tablets rather than you supply it to them, even if you're charging a decent rate and trying to absorb that cost by charging more for it. And yes, it may even out over the course of your whole route if some customers use less tablets, if you have salt pools on your route. But I think unless you do the math, you won't really see if moving that tablet charge out and maybe not having the price quite as high for the new service accounts. That's also better optically when you're trying to get more business. It may save you money in the long run, but you won't know that until you do the accounting. And if you don't have a spreadsheet with all your customers on there, knowing which ones use more chemicals, now you don't have to get like crazy if you don't have time to like break it up to each customer, but you can kind of spotlight the customers with the heavy use pretty easily and make a small spreadsheet with them to see what the rate should be if you wanted to make those pools more profitable. But back to breaking out the tablets as a good example here. How would you achieve this if you haven't done this before and you have, let's say you have 80 accounts and 60 of those are tablet pools? How are you going to explain to the customer that now you can't absorb the cost of the tablets and they have to buy a bucket at retail price from you, which is like $180 or whatever for the 50-pound bucket of tablets? Well, you can do it in two ways. The first way, of course, is to slowly do this with customers that are going to push back. Now, there are customers on your route, maybe 20 of them, where if you do implement this, they won't even blink. But there's a percentage of those, maybe 40 out of the 60, that are going to push back on this. And this is where the proper accounting of your business comes into play, because you can slowly implement this and you can still do this well if you kind of know all your numbers and if there's some areas you can cut. And so you can kind of do this partially. Tell the customer that there's going to be a surcharge next summer for the tablets. It's going to be $100 for this summer, and then the following year, you're going to have them purchase the trichlor tablets from you. So you can kind of gradually break this into the customers, and you can kind of see how this affects your bottom line as well when you're doing the accounting. If you lose 3 customers because of this, how much will that impact your overall income based on the fact that you're charging $100 to 40 customers, which is $4,000? Will this help absorb any loss of accounts? But again, you won't know any of this unless you know how much money you're making. Now, basic profit and loss sheet, I definitely would recommend doing that, getting an Etsy form on that, and then just doing a across the line profit and loss. And you're going to break all your fuel costs into this, all your insurance costs, any kind of supply costs, buying new nets, skimmers and nets and poles, all this goes into there. Your truck payment, everything should be on here. And then you'll have the gross amount you're making each month from the customers. And then you're going to subtract all these. And then you should get a pretty good net profit before taxes. Now, there are some tax advantages, of course, the mileage. And you should be doing 1 or 2 deductions with your service vehicle, either a straight cost deduction or the mileage deduction. And if you have a good CPA, when you start doing this for the first time, they'll tell you which one is probably better for you, because once you start deducting this on a vehicle, you can't switch, which I find weird with the IRS, that you should be able to switch if you needed to, but they don't allow you to once you start doing this. And so you have to find out which one's better. For mileage, maybe try getting a mileage app. That way it takes all the guesswork out of it. Maybe something like Mile IQ or TripLog. That way it'll log all the miles you're driving, and it'll make things easier for you to. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Track. But again, if the CPA is setting this up for you and you don't know how much vehicle expenses you're spending each year, you're just guessing when you meet with him. So having a log of all your vehicle expenses is also important as well. And then try to figure out what else you can deduct when you're talking to him. What's better? What are things that you can purchase this year that's going to be a tax advantage for you in that year? And so there is some tax advantage. And by the way, you should be paying your quarterly estimated taxes every year, because if you don't, there is a penalty that the IRS tax on, and that does cost you money. Now, you don't have to be like a Scrooge and a miser about things, and every penny has to be accounted for. That's not what I'm saying here, and you shouldn't have to switch insurances every year. Your agent can make some changes for you, and sometimes you just have to absorb the higher cost of something. That's the way it is. You can't keep switching and finding a lower price, and you just add that into your business model, because on the other end of things, if you notice that your health insurance has gone up, your insurance has gone up for your vehicle, other costs have gone up, like chemical costs, which always seem to go up, then you're going to have to reevaluate how much you're charging for your pool service. And to do this, you'd have to have, again, a grasp of your profit and loss. You can see how much you need to go up, because without knowing how much difference you are spending in expenses, you won't really know how high to raise the rates to your service accounts. And there is a tipping point where if you go too high, too fast, you may lose certain accounts. But in that also, I've given this math before. If you do raise your rates $10 and you lose 2 or 3 accounts, the amount that you've raised, everyone else will cover that. But if you lose 6 or 7 accounts, then you start to lose a little bit of money and traction. But if you lose 2 or 3 accounts, you can add new accounts to those spots at the higher rate and be back on track pretty quickly. And you won't know how much you need to raise each account. And you may want to raise pools different rates, not just straight across the board. Maybe one $10, one $5, one $15, whatever you want to do. But unless you're knowing what you're making on that pool, you won't know what to raise it to logically. I know a lot of pool pros have never even implemented this or done this before in a more detailed fashion. You kind of know how much money that's coming into your account, and you kind of know how much money you're spending based on how much you're paying for your fixed items like your health insurance and your truck insurance, but you don't really know where all the money is going. And until you really know where all the money is going, you can't really make your business profitable, in my opinion, and maximize everything. I also talk a lot about kind of being the In-N-Out burger of pool service, where you just have 3 or 4 items on your menu, like In-N-Out burger. So if you're doing a lot of things like startups and green pool cleanups and acid washes, or if you're doing a lot of repairs, if you're not accounting for those also in the spreadsheet and seeing if those are actually profitable for the amount of time you're investing in those, versus if you were to, let's say you wanted to stop doing green pool cleanups, you already have 80 accounts and you want to add 5 more accounts in that block of time where you would be doing cleanups. You can do the math on that and see, by adding 5 accounts and saving that time for service accounts versus doing extra services, am I making more money? Or if you just do repairs here and there and get $300 or $400 profit during that time for that week or that month, it may be more logical to fill that time with more service accounts and just refer the repairs out to someone else. But again, you won't know all of this or any of this really unless you're doing proper accounting to see if maybe adding 5 more service accounts or raising the rates and losing a few accounts would be better for you, so you can free up some time to do more repairs. These are all things that you need to do in business to see if you're actually making a profit and how can you maximize that profit to the next level. And it's really interesting, I find, how the COVID-19 pandemic changed everything in our industry, because prior to 2020, or whenever the pandemic hit, whatever you want to officially call it, the interesting part about all this is that prior to this, the pool industry, everything in the industry, if you're an old timer like me, was flat. And what I mean by this is that the chemical costs year to year never went up. Your pool service rates, you didn't have to raise them much because everything was flat. The price of equipment was flat, the price of chemicals were flat, and there wasn't much changing going on. And so doing any kind of profit and loss for your business was something that you didn't think about because it wasn't moving. Nothing was changing, and there was nothing to alter in your, if you had a spreadsheet, it would pretty much look the same every year. In fact, even insurance rates were flat. It was kind of like the golden age of pool service, from, I'm going to say 2000 to 2019, where there wasn't much going on as far as movement. But since the COVID-19 pandemic and all the economic fallout from that, everything changes pretty rapidly in the industry. We went through a period where trichlor tablets, you had to get a loan to buy a bucket of tablets basically, to where Cal Hypo shoots up one year and everything else, all the equipment, of course, costs more money. All these things have contributed to the reality that unless you're doing really fine-tuned accounting, which, by the way, is really easy to do once you set it up. It sounds like a lot of work, but once you enter everything into the spreadsheet, you're just altering that spreadsheet here and there, and all the inputted data that you put into the spreadsheet is going to be there for you. There's no need to change major things, just minor tweaks here and there when things go up or things go down in price. Well, things never go down in price. When things go up in price, how are you going to change that on your sheet? So I encourage you, again, go to Etsy.com. Just go through all the spreadsheets that they have there. Just type in profit and loss spreadsheet or, account log or something and see which ones are available and see which ones you like. Sometimes they have a packet of them. And just start inputting on a Saturday morning, start inputting all the data, and then you're going to really see your business in a new light. You don't have to take a course or spend any money to get trained how to do this. All you have to do is get one of these spreadsheets that have these locked cells so you can't mess it up, and just start adding everything in there. And you'll be sometimes amazed how much money you're actually not making when you think you're making money, and how much money is actually bleeding in your business, where you can kind of shore it up once you discover where the bleeding's at. And again, it's something that is not rocket science. My son right now is taking an accounting course online through a college just to get that done so he doesn't have to take that next year when he goes to college. And he's finding it to be just a matter of plugging in numbers on the spreadsheets that they give him as homework. And that's all it really is. It's you put the numbers in and then you're plugging them in and moving them around. And you'll be really glad you've done this, and you're going to really move your business in the right direction because, again, as Rockefeller said, you really can't be a businessman unless you're an accountant first. And this is something that's really true in any business that you're going to run, whether it's pool service, if you expand into real estate, if you buy another business, or if you're expanding to other with more employees. All this really needs is really drop dead hard accounting to make sure you're making money in your business. Looking for other podcasts, of course, Monday through Friday. I put one here on YouTube. Also, if you go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, on the banner is the podcast icon. Click on that, and that will take you to 1,700 podcasts you can listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.